Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we're going to be talking about strong tornadoes, hurricane force wind gusts, as well as the polar vortex comes back next week. Good morning everyone, this is your Thursday, February 17th update, and what we're taking a look at here is the overall severe weather threat for today, and it has been upgraded to an enhanced risk for areas into portions of Memphis, Tennessee, going into Nashville, Tennessee, as well as portions of really the entire state of Mississippi is going to be under the gun, heading into Huntsville, Alabama, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee as well later on this afternoon. But it originates. We had some strong thunderstorms last night, and some of those did turn severe out here in West Texas towards the Panhandle, Wichita Falls, and southern Oklahoma area. They had some 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts, but that continues to race across as this upper level low that we've been talking about all week is now shifted off into the east. Now it's going to be impacting portions of the southeast, so they've got that severe threat extending basically from East Texas all the way up into portions of West Virginia, as well as North Carolina, and down here into Georgia area. But in the middle, that's where the bullseye is really going to be taking place later on this afternoon, kind of during peak heating. And unfortunately, the main risk with this setup is your damaging winds, but we also have a huge enhanced risk in hatched risk area for strong tornadoes, all these areas in the dotted lines here. So that covers almost the entire state of Mississippi and portions of Alabama heading into Tennessee. It's really highlighting where that enhanced risk, that's when the atmosphere is really capable of producing possibility of those EF2 type tornado capabilities. So I am expecting a big day and a lot of tornadic activity, and these storms are going to be racing across 50 to 60 miles an hour. So as we get into that noon time frame, you definitely have to stay weather aware for a good 4, 6, 8 hours across as it moves from west to east from these areas. So let's kind of highlight the overall setup this morning with the hazards, because there's a lot of snow happening right now too. There's a big swath extending from the Panhandle through Oklahoma, through Kansas, going through Missouri, as well as Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio here, in portions of northern New England, where they've got some heavier snow, and it's snowing big time right now in Kansas City. That's probably their biggest snowfall event of the year, and some of these snowfall rates are approaching 2 inches per hour. So those huge big flakes are flying out of the sky, and that's going to continue really for about another 6 hours to come. So they're going to be picking up some pretty impressive amounts, but you got some very heavy rain just to the south of there in southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and southern Ohio, but a lot of high wind as well, as this thing is going to be racing across into the east. So these wind gusts are really going to be packing a punch of that 40, 50, 60 mile per hour gust. And as we get towards portions off the Cape here and towards Long Island, some of these could be gusting up to hurricane force wind gust. So yeah, it's a busy day in the weather department. And here's that Arctic front. So it all happens and trails back through an Arctic front. You can actually see where it is this morning around 7 o'clock, where I'm kind of recording this video. But out ahead of it, there's the warm sector, and that's the concern as these dew points continue to rise. Back in the mid 60s for dew points, temperatures are in the 70s. For these are morning temperatures, guys. That is not normal for February, and at that clash of temperatures, and that's going to set the stage with the atmosphere rotating, unfortunately, for those strong and severe thunderstorms later on this afternoon. So let's now kind of break this down as far as the timing goes. So here's the radar depiction of, as we get into that noon time frame, we're going to start to see those severe thunderstorms really start to break out. So you're going to probably start to see numerous tornado warnings really be highlighting over portions of Louisiana, portions of Arkansas, especially as you get into Mississippi and going into western parts of Tennessee. Then you got all that heavier rain just to the south of there. That's where the flood watches are going to be taking place, with that snow still snowing in Kansas City, and it's going to be still snowing in portions in and around the Chicago area as this continues to race across. And then you also have that ice as well as we're going to have some of the higher, warmer air aloft. It's going to be, having some ice just to the south of there. But as we continue the view and as we get into that peak heating of the afternoon, we're talking 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think these storms to really start to become strong and really start to be elevated, of seeing some of those stronger tornadoes, possibly those EF2 type variety, into Mississippi, going into Alabama, going into Tennessee, and portions of Kentucky by then, as that snow is starting to wind down in portions of Kansas City, but it's still snowing big time in northern Illinois and northern Indiana, as well as southern Michigan, as we've got all rain continues to impact several inches of rain in the portions of Pennsylvania, going into upstate New York, as well as portions of southern Canada there. But as we continue the time frame into the 9 o'clock hour, I mean, you can see how fast it's moving. So that's kind of the good thing about this. You need to stay weather aware for about 4 to 6 hours, but once this passes, it's clear skies ahead. Back behind it with that cold air continue to push, but out ahead of it, you got that warm sector. So by 9 o'clock tonight, we're gonna have to be dealing with those stronger thunderstorms entering portions of Georgia, entering portions of South Carolina, going into portions of North Carolina, into West Virginia. And then it's all just heavier rain as we get into the mid-Atlantic states, and eventually heading off into along the I-95 corridor by the time we get into the kind of the overnight hour time frame. And that's when these winds are really going to be picking up to those hurricane force wind gusts potentially. So Jersey, Delaware, getting into Long Island, getting into Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, along the Cape here, along the southern shore of the I-95 corridor. Man, these storms are really going to be packing a punch with a lot of heavier winds for that region. So let's highlight the winds. So let's look at the central U.S. and look at some of the wind gusts as this Arctic front trails behind. So yeah, no question, easily 40 to upwards to 50 mile per hour wind gust as this continues to verse across. Obviously, where you're having that severe weather threat, severe storms, these winds could even be higher than that. But yeah, these winds, widespread of 50 to 60, upwards to 65 miles an hour into portions of Kentucky, getting into portions of Ohio here. And as we extend off to the east, man, there's your bullseye. I mean, widespread 60s, upwards almost 70 mile per hour wind gust at times in portions of West Virginia. Once you get up here into North Carolina, going into Jersey, going into Long Island, that's when it really start to intensify. I mean, that's 83 miles an hour wind gusts, folks. That is some serious stuff. As yeah, it's definitely not out of the question. Some of these wind gusts at time could be that hurricane force winds of those 60s, 70s, upwards to almost 80 miles an hour at times. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But there's your snow swath. This is adding to those totals what we have actually seen so far. So yeah, we're going to see a good swath of 4 to 8 inches. That's going to be pretty much kind of the norm in some of these areas. A little bit lighter in some of these areas, but yeah, it's definitely not out of the question. Some of these could really kind of overperform, get some double-digit totals in isolated spots of 10 to 11, possibly up toward foot totals. And some of this banding here, as this continues to race across, is definitely not out of the question. And then you also have that ice threat to deal with as well. So even a glaze of ice on the roads, it means treacherous travel. So definitely be on the lookout for your ice in this neck of the woods as well, just in the south of that Arctic air mass. But now let's continue the view and go into the weekend. Because, I mean, things rapidly change. I mean, talk about roller coaster temperatures. I mean, as this continues to push off the coast, we're talking Friday morning. By the weekend, going into Sunday, there's the flow. I mean, it heads back to a Pacific flow. It's a zonal flow. The jet stream really flattens out. It just more or less pushes back up into Canada. So we've got a lot of warm air coming back for a very nice weekend ahead. But all indications that changes in a big way coming up into next week, because a lot of indications from global guidance is talking about, hey, the polar vortex is coming back and it's starting to elongate and kind of stretch out and push southward, pulling out from that Arctic air from the upper atmosphere. and dragging it into Canada and eventually get it into the US. And that will be heading southward as we get into the middle of next week. And here's the latest European ensemble member guidance kind of highlighting that with that upper air support. And the GFS ensembles is really kind of saying the same thing. So we've got model congruency already that, hey, winter is not over. It is coming back in a big way with a vengeance, with very cold air pulling southward out of Canada. And that's going to impact much of the central US. And the thing about this Arctic outbreak, as we get into next week, by the middle of next week, it doesn't look like it's going to stay around for a day or two. It could hang around for an extended period of time as this cold air continues to push southward and would just expand for much of the country going into later next week. So it definitely appears once this cold blast hits, that below average temperatures is going to hang around through the end of February, heading into the early part of March. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. You'll definitely stay weather aware this afternoon, especially if you live in those risk zones and all those heavier winds. Like I mentioned, these storms are going to be moving at 50 to 60 miles an hour. So definitely have your safety plan in place and stay weather aware with these systems as these move across. But all this will be over with by the time we get into tomorrow morning on Friday. So luckily it doesn't last that long, but it is serious stuff that's on the table today. So definitely stay weather aware. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.